I'm going to show you how I transform my 3 small pothos plants into one big beautiful plant that I'm absolutely proud to display in my home. These were 3 plants that were looking pretty good by themselves, but I knew they could be transformed into something spectacular. I'm really happy with the results, and this planter is only going to get bigger and better the more it grows. I'm going to show you the full process as well as give you some important pointers on what you need to consider if you want to combine multiple plants into the same pot. And this video is sponsored by Squarespace, and more on them in a little bit. So what I did isn't particularly ingenious or anything. It's not rocket science, but it's something I don't see many people doing for some reason, even though the results can be gorgeous. I took 3 pothos plants that I had growing in my home, combined them into the same pot, and created a big planter that is full of colour, contrast and texture that was missing with the plants on their own. Just look at the colours and textures complementing each other so beautifully. Together with the bright orange pot that I chose to keep it in, I really am a proud plant dad. The 3 plants I chose were the pothos devil's ivy, the neon pothos and the satin pothos. Now I chose 3 plants that are in the same family, and this is really important. You need to choose plants that have the same care requirements, particularly the same water needs, so that they'll be happy in the same pot. You're not going to get great results if you group a jade with a calathea and a philodendron. Obviously they have vastly different care requirements, so won't be happy living in the same pot. The easiest way to do this is to stick to plants in the same family, like choosing just pothos or just tradescantia or even just types of monstera. Another thing to consider, and another reason to choose plants in the same family, is the rate of growth. You want plants that are going to grow at the same pace so that one plant doesn't overcrowd the others. This can be seriously detrimental and impact the health of the slower growing plants. Plus, it won't look very good if one half of the planter is nice and full and the other is empty. The pothos plants that I chose should all comfortably grow at the same rate. Maybe the satin pothos will grow slightly slower because it has more variegation, but this is why I chose that plant to have slightly longer stems. And if you didn't know, variegated plants tend to grow a little bit slower than non-variegated ones because they have less chlorophyll in the leaves. Chlorophyll is the green part of the leaves that captures the light for energy and helps the plant grow. So if you can, choose plants that have similar levels of variegation in the leaves and therefore the same light needs. Going back to my earlier example, a jade plant loves full sun, whereas a calathea and philodendron would scorch their leaves in the light a jade needs. So not a great matchup. You don't just have to use pothos plants. Most family of plants will work well being planted together. The obvious example is succulents. They're often planted together in a terrarium, for example. Calatheas would work nicely, although you'd probably need to choose smaller plants so as not to have too crowded a pot. I personally really like combining vining or trailing plants like pothos and philodendron because once the vines get long and trail from the pot, the contrast in vines look beautiful, especially if you have it in a nice decorative pot. Recently, I've been having fun setting up my own website that has information about the channel and some of my key links, and over time I'll be adding houseplant care articles. To do this, I've been using today's video sponsor, Squarespace. The thing I've loved about using Squarespace is how easy it is to use. I'm a novice when it comes to design stuff, but I had my website set up in less than an hour. There are tons of templates to choose from that you can easily edit to make your own with this super simple drag and drop system that makes everything a breeze. I found it really easy to drag and drop images and logos into my website using one of their templates. It's also a super convenient way to set up an online store with easy payment processing features. So if you seriously got the green bug and want to set up a little plant selling empire, Squarespace is the perfect website to help you. Maybe I should start selling plants. Anyway, head over to squarespace.com for a free 2-week trial. When you're ready to launch your very own website, go to squarespace.com/Sheffield Made Plants to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain using the code Sheffield Made Plants. I'll also add a link to my new website in the description of this video for you to have a little nosy. Now, how to make this planter. There are 2 approaches you can take for this project. You can either take established plants like I did, or you can take cuttings of plants, root them, and then plant them into the same pot once they're all rooted. This is a great option if you have a few pothos or philodendron that you like to keep separate and then make another big planter with them all combined. Let's have a look at how I created mine then. The first thing you need to consider is the size of the pot you're going to plant in. Because you are combining multiple plants together, you'll need a fairly decent sized pot, probably a pot that will be normally too big for the plants. Normally this risks root rot, but you can get away with it a little with pothos and philodendron because the plants and roots tend to grow fairly quickly, so they should fill out the pot within a few months. In that time, you just want to be super careful not to water too often so that the soil doesn't remain constantly wet. So size up your plants and grab a suitable plastic pot that's going to fit them. You could, if you wanted to, go straight into the decorative pot without the plastic nursery pot, but you just need to be super careful with your watering, so I recommend using a plastic pot. Grab each of your individual plants and take them out of their pots and lightly discard some of the soil. Doing this just makes your life a little easier adding all the plants into the same pot without the soil getting in the way. You don't need to go crazy and take every crumb off the roots though, just enough to get rid of big masses of soil. Fill up your larger nursery pot with a base layer of soil and then size up your plants, deciding which way you want to plant them. And don't worry too much about getting the perfect arrangement. They soon grow and will fill in any spaces that are exposed. Once you're happy with the placement, dig a hole, pop your plants in and backfill around each one with soil, compressing them slightly so they're snugly in the pot. And by the way, I'm using a soil mix that I make myself, and it's just 5 parts all-purpose compost that I buy from my local garden centre and 2 parts perlite. Use whatever soil you normally use for your plants, but just make sure it's suitable for the ones you're using. It needs to be free draining so the roots don't suffocate from a lack of oxygen and too much water. And this is what perlite helps do. Once you're finished adding the soil, just take a step back and just make sure that you're happy with how everything looks. It's dead easy to make changes at this point, or even start again if you think you can do better. Give the whole planter a good drink, making sure every area of the soil is fully saturated. Like I always say, you can't get it too wet at this point. Overwatering is more about frequency of watering rather than volume. You'll probably find that there will be some depressions in the soil once you're done watering. This is simply because the water has displaced any air pockets that were in the soil and it's sunk down a little bit. Just simply add some more soil on top to fill in any gaps. Let all the excess water fully drain out of the holes at the bottom and then add your plant to your decorative pot. I chose a nice bright orange pot because it contrasts nicely with the foliage of the pothos plants, but the world is your oyster. Place it somewhere nice and bright and enjoy your masterpiece. I've got mine sat in my living room next to my couch and in front of my west facing window. As the pot is quite large and the vines will trail down the sides, it's going to be important for me to rotate it every week so they get a good amount of even light on each side. You might be wondering why I've gone against my own advice and not attached them to a moss pole for them to grow bigger leaves as they climb. And you're right, the leaves will stay small as they trail, but for this design, that's perfectly fine. I think it looks gorgeous having the different vines hanging from the pot, but I can see it looking nice growing up an obelisk style trellis. To take this planter to the next level, you can take cuttings of each of the plants once their stems get long, root them, and then plant them back into the pot. This will create an even nicer, fuller plant. Just make sure you're adding an equal amount of each variety to prevent one taking over the others. To take cuttings, all you need to do is make a cut underneath a leaf node on a stem, making sure there are a pair of leaf nodes at the top and bottom of the cutting. Remove the lower leaves and pop the cutting into a clear vessel of water and place somewhere bright. You need to remove the lower leaves because you don't want them sat in water. They'll rot and that rot will spread to the stem, killing your cutting. Within a few weeks, you'll start to see some roots appear from the nodes at the bottom. Wait for the roots to get a couple of inches in length and then pop them into the soil. A few weeks after that and a new stem will start to grow and a new plant is well on its way. If rooting is taking a long time, then chances are you don't have it in a bright enough spot, in which case you need to move it closer to the window or get it under a grow light. I find grow lights are perfect for getting cuttings to root quickly, and I recommend the Sansi grow bulb that I've got listed in the description to this video. Do let me know in the comments if you've done a mixed planter like this yourself and which plants you use. I'd be really interested to know. It'll probably give me inspiration for my next one. Earlier I mentioned how vining plants grow bigger leaves when they're encouraged to grow vertically, and in this video here I explain why that is the case, as well as showing you some great trellis options, so click on the link so you don't miss out.